The Sexual Offense Treatment Board meeting is convening at 9:01 a.m. on November 15th, 2024. This meeting is held in person and by MS Teams video conference and is being recorded. The recording will be posted to the internet for public viewing. I will now call roll. Devin Vaughn, Chair. Shannon Rose, Vice Chair.
Here.
Robbie Johnson, English. Don Thomas.
Present.
Karen Ledoux. Brittany Renicky. Karen Cox.
Here.
Members, when you wish to speak, please state your last name for the record. Board members are asked to not use the chat feature during meetings. The Health Licensing Office asks that individuals attending through MS Teams keep your phones muted and cameras off during the entire meeting or until you are given an opportunity to comment during the public and interested parties feedback period, if indicated on the agenda. Public members wishing to speak must first sign in on the roster sheet available or email Josh Page at josh.page@oha.oregon.gov and provide your first and last name. Everyone is asked to use appropriate language, manners, and protocols when conducting board business. This meeting is called to order.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Bob Bothwell. I'm the director here at the Health Licensing Office. It's a pleasure to have everybody here today, and I mean everybody. Sometimes we're just a quorum with other programs, but most of you all are here, and we have the rest of the board online, and that's just great. So Chair, the first thing we need to do is approve the agenda, but I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have to amend the agenda because we're not going to have executive session today. Because we're going to, we're working on a contract with a subject matter expert, and then that way we keep the board out of having to do that type of role with investigation. Nobody gets called as a witness or anything like that. So, and is that correct?
That is my understanding, Bob, is that we left the executive session on the agenda to allow for flexibility if the board was needed. But it seems at this time that they are not for that purpose. So if we could amend the agenda, removing the executive session, and then we would just need a motion, a second, and a roll call.
So we are amending the agenda, taking the executive session off. Okay. And that would be number 7 and number 8. So if I can get someone to make a motion to accept the agenda.
I so move.
You are.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm John Thomas and I so move.
Thank you. And a second.
Robbie Johnson, English.
Thank you, Robbie. Okay, we've got a first and a second. Chair, can we call roll, please? Or an aye vote for approval.
Calling a vote for approval of the amendment of the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Okay, so Chair, I know you're new, so go down your list.
Yes.
Everybody says aye and the recording doesn't pick up who said what. So.
Okay. Go person by person.
Sure.
Okay. Devin Vaughn, aye. Shannon Rose.
Aye.
Robbie Johnson, English. Don Thomas.
Aye.
Karen Ledoux.
Aye.
Brittany Renicky.
Aye.
Karen Cox.
Aye.
That is done. So the next item on the agenda is some introductions because we have some new board members. So if Brittany can tell us a little bit about Brittany for us, for HLO and your peers.
Brittany Renicky, clinical supervisor and therapist at Higher Ground Counseling. I am an SOTB board member and was appointed from SOTB board to be on the SOTB. I have been working in this field since 2014 and have a wide range of experience of working like residential, working with adults and adolescents who struggled with illegal or problematic sexual behaviors.
Question.
Yeah.
You say residential, is it like some sort of residential care? Or
Residential
education?
program for clients that are in Oregon Youth Authority.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Karen?
Yes, would you like my camera on or off? I'm happy
Please.
to-
Please, camera on, thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Karen Cox. I am a licensed clinical social worker and was appointed through the OATSA board. I'm currently the OATSA president, and I am a therapist that works with both adolescents and adults in the Willamette Valley and have been in private practice since 2012. And prior to that, I was a juvenile probation officer for about 17 years.
Welcome.
Thank you.
For coming today. If I can just go around the room and have John introduce himself. For this.
John Thomas. I was appointed by as a member of the OATSA board. I am currently board secretary. I've been in that role for just a year. My experience is both in residential psych, in treating folks with problematic sexual behaviors who have been adjudicated as such. And I did a year and a half of private practice. And since April of this year, I have been the statewide sex offense treatment coordinator for the Oregon Youth Authority. I'm based out of Pendleton.
Thank you. You came a long way today.
I've been here all week, so I don't
Devin.
I'm Devin Vaughn. I am been on the SOTB board a little over a year. Was recommended to that position through the OSOTN board. I currently am the director at Higher Ground Counseling, and a colleague and myself started Higher Ground about 8 years ago for outpatient group therapy practice based out of the Beaverton area. We have an office in Newburgh as well. Prior to that, I spent about 12 years in the residential world with Janus Youth programs with the Amani Residential Treatment Center, which now no longer exists, but was a long-term placement for DHS involved youth who were adjudicated on sex offenses. So I've been in the field of this work since about 2007.
Aaron Ledoux.
I currently work for Washington County Community Corrections, and I am the Parole and Probation Division Manager. I was a PO for about 6.5 years, which included supervising sex JIIs, sex offenses. Prior to that, I have an LPC and so a CADC. I worked in the mental health addiction world for about 20 years before I came into community corrections. So
And we have Robbie Johnson English.
My name is Robbie Johnson, English. I am representing Oregon Juvenile Department Directors Association. So I'm the juvenile director in Hood River County. My background is in supervision of youth with legal sexual behaviors, and I supervised that population for over 20 years before becoming the director in my department. I also am on our local children's advocacy board in an effort to support victims in our community as well.
Welcome. Did I get everybody? All board members? Shannon.
Hi, all. I'm Shannon Rose. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director at the Oregon Sexual Assault Task Force and appointed to the victim service provider spot on this board. I've been working in survivor advocacy and services for about 20 years, direct service, and now at the task force, we are a statewide training and technical assistance agency that also works on policy and support statewide for victims' rights and victim services.
Thank you. And then we'll go to some staff. Ann Thompson is your analyst. Ann.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Ann Thompson, and I'm the analyst for this board, along with several others at the Health Licensing Office. I've been with this board for quite a while, and if you ever have any questions or concerns, you would direct them to myself, and I would do my best to help you.
And Trampus Shuck.
Hello, everybody. I'm Trampus Shuck. I'm the interim regulatory manager here at the Health Licensing Office, and I've been around the office for quite some time, 16 years, and been investigator and policy and now here. So I'm here to talk about regulatory stuff and also, and I'm also always available for questions or things like that. So if you have issues or questions about regulatory, you can always get a hold of me.
Thanks, Trampus. And again, I'm Bob Bothwell. I'm the director currently, and I've been with HLO for 13 years, and I came from 20 years with the Department of Corrections, mostly doing some sort of investigation, internal affairs, fugitives, and everything in between. And so we have some new faces with us. We have Josh.
I'm Josh. I'm the board specialist, so I'm the one that communicates with you guys regarding board meetings and all that stuff. If you have any questions regarding board meetings, I'm your guy.
And we have Chrissy.
I'm Chrissy Pickett. I'm the new executive assistant for Bosch. We make his life easy most days.
There's not been very many of those. Ready for that path. So, Chair, ready to rock and roll? Get through this?
Yes.
Okay. Next item on the agenda are the approval of the meeting dates. And we have two dates, May 9th of 2025 at 9 a.m. and November 14. Same time. Anybody has any objections or concerns? Or wants to recommend we approve the agenda, not the agenda, the meeting dates, we can do that. And of course, if something comes up where one of the board members can't make it, as long as we have quorum, we can have it. But if we go below quorum, we would reschedule it.
So Devin, just wanted to make sure, I know that our OSODN annual conference is like the first week or the first couple of days of the first week of May. Just want to make sure that those are the dates. And then for the OATSA, your guys' conference is kind of similar. Is it April?
Ours is in April. Yes, April 10th, 11th, and 12th. This is John Thomas.
But it's just that May day. I think that should be fun, right?
I have the, this is John Thomas. I have the ASOTN conference, May 12, 13, 14.
Okay.
Days work.
Those days work.
Karen. Shannon.
Yes.
Days work.
They do.
Yeah, they're fine for me. I don't have any conflicts. Thank you.
So if we can get a motion to approve those dates from someone other than the chair.
I'll make a motion to approve the dates for the next board meetings.
And that was Robin, thank you. And a second?
Who was that, Bob?
Robbie.
Okay, thank you.
This is John Thomas. I second.
Is that? Sorry. And did you get, John?
Yeah, I have Robbie as a first and John Thomas as a second. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Devin Vaughn. Aye. Shannon Rose.
Aye.
Robbie Johnson English.
Aye.
John Thomas.
Aye.
Karen Ledoux.
Aye.
Brittany Renicky.
Aye.
Karen Cox.
Aye.
Very good, thank you. So that passes. The next is the chair and vice chair nominations. So I will go over the board membership real quick. Looks like anybody can do it. We have Devin, who is current chair, and his first term expires October 26th of 2027. And Devin can reappoint. John Thomas is in first term, and that expires July 26th, 2026. John can reappoint. Robbie is first term, and it expires July 31 of 2027. Robbie can reappoint. Shannon is first term, and it expires August 31 of 2027. Can reappoint. Karen Ledoux is in a first term as well. expires December 19 of 2027, and reappoint Brittany Renicky, his first term. It expires June 30, 28. And can reappoint Karen Cox. His first term expires September 30 of 2028. So with that being said, if someone would like to nominate themselves or another for chair, or Devin Vaughn can stay the chair if somebody wants, so chooses to nominate him. If you want to stay as chair.
I don't mind.
I would like, this is John Thomas. I'd like to nominate Devin Vaughn remain as board chair.
Robbie Johnson.
Okay. And then for vice chair, we currently have Shannon Rose.
I'm okay to remain vice chair if folks want me to, but no pressure.
Thank you. And I totally neglected to ask you. We're gonna stick you with it anyway. No.
Devin, can I?
No, sir.
This is Robbie Johnson, English. I'd like to nominate Shannon Rose to continue as vice chair.
Okay, can I get a second?
Brittany Renicky will second Shannon Rose as vice chair.
Okay, we can get a vote for Devin Vaughn to remain chair and Shannon Rose to remain as vice chair.
Okay, so for Devin to remain chair, do I vote?
Please.
Devin Vaughn, aye. Shannon Rose,
Aye.
Robbie Johnson English,
Aye.
John Thomas,
Aye.
Karen Ledoux.
Aye.
Brittany Renicky,
Aye.
Karen Cox.
Aye.
And for Shannon Rose to remain vice chair, Devin Vaughn, aye. Shannon Rose,
Aye.
Robbie Johnson English,
Aye.
John Thomas,
Aye.
Karen Ledoux.
Aye.
Brittany Renicky,
Aye.
Karen Cox.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And congratulations. So the next item on the agenda is the director's report, if we're ready to move on. And I've already covered the board membership, but I do want to point out, and we had a little bit of a discussion about the trainings that are required. I was informed that they're not working properly, so we'll look into that, find out why they keep saying you have to do it after you've just completed it. So I do want to let everybody know that there's a overview of boards and commissions, which is required once a year. Information security training foundations is required annually. Excuse me, did I say once a year for boards and commissions? That's once per term. And then information security training is required annually. Preventing discrimination and harassment is required annually. And the Oregon ethics law overview is optional, but there's been a lot of changes at the ethics commission, so I would recommend taking that. And then, of course, we just went over the board membership. And the licensing statistics. So for the new board members, we run on a fiscal year, which was not January to December. It's actually July 1 to June 30 of the following year. I think most government agencies run on that, so I think a lot of you are aware of that. So for licenses issued for clinical therapists, we've issued 2 in Q1 of 25 and 3 in Q2 of 2025. And the certified associate therapists, we have not issued any in fiscal year 2025, but in Q4 of 24, we issued 2. Certified secondary clinical therapists, in fiscal year 2025, we have not issued any. Excuse me, we've issued 1 in Q1, and we issued 1 back in Q4 of fiscal year 2024. For the certified therapist interns, We issued 2 in Q1 of 25 and 2 in Q2 so far in 2025. And licenses renewed, we've added in Q2 for the certified clinical therapists. We've had 7, 6 by paper, 6 online and 1 by paper. I will get this figured out one of these days. The certified associate therapist, we had 1, and that was by paper, online in Q2 of 2025. Certified secondary clinical therapists in Q1, we've had 2, 1 online, 1 by paper. And interns, we have had 4, all online in Q1 of fiscal year 2025. Licenses by age and gender, that's self-explanatory. One thing of note, we have 1 individual who identifies as female and 1 who identifies as male in the 74 to 81 years old range. Any questions so far?
Bob, this is Ann. Just in case I missed it, did you explain for our new members the oddities of the state fiscal year?
I did.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thanks for clarifying. So licensing trends, these averages, these numbers that you see here are average. And so for the certified clinical, looks like a horrible roller coaster ride, but we ended up Q2 of 2025, 68.5 on average. Certified associate therapists, average of 20 in Q2 of 2025. Certified secondary therapists, we ended up on a high note with an average of 16 in Q2 of 2025. And for the intern, we are at 16.5 for Q2 2025. So even those, like the certified associate therapist and the certified clinical therapists, they are low in comparison to where they were in 23 and 24 fiscal years. So we're in a cycle where licenses may have expired or, become inactive, or we're in the cycle where they're renewing, depending on the time of the year. So I would expect those to go back up.
Robbie Johnson.
Sure.
So when looking at certified clinical therapists, we're saying there's a total of 68 in the state. This
Currently.
And then is there any way of knowing how many of those served? Well,
So Robbie asked with regards to the certified clinical therapists, if there's a way to determine who served youth. And I don't know that answer off the top of my head. We issued the license based on criteria. And so I don't know. And I don't know if we're even able to extrapolate the information out of our elite system. And
no, we do not have, and this is something that's come up before. We issue licenses based on criteria, not based on the population that they serve, nor is that breakdown even available in if you look at our statutes, they just talk about clinical provider or associate provider. They don't talk about population specific. So we don't gather, we have mailing addresses where people live. We've been asked in the past if we can figure out where people work. No, we don't ask that question. And we're not, we can only gather certain information. So we have mailing addresses, but not where they work. And we have no information on the population they serve.
any other questions?
I have a question. This is John Thomas. I have a question. And I don't know if I've asked this question before, but as a licensed clinical social worker, my license has my home mailing address as where, and also I report my place of practice. is that a factor of, as you said, for the SOTB, would that be something that would need to be changed in statute and OARs in order to gather that information?
That would be something we would have to do a deep dive on because we have statutes that affect individual boards, right? And then we have statutes that affect how the health licensing office operates as a machine. And I've mentioned before that we can only gather the information that we are specifically allowed to gather.
Okay.
And where you work is not one of those things. So somebody would have to go, and I mean, Bob probably is more intimately familiar with the ins and outs of the statutory authority under which the health licensing office administers boards and programs, but it would have to be a massive change because again, we're only allowed to collect, because we have to keep this information forever, right? And where you work or if you work. And the thing is, we have 19 boards and programs and people keep their licenses up, but they don't practice at all.
Right.
So we've been asked in the past by members of this board, hey, you know, what population are people serving? Or, hey, can you include this on renewals? Nope, we can't ask for that unless there's a statutory change.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And what the information that you receive on your license is the information you provide us, which typically is a mailing address, wherever you receive your mail, home, office, or wherever. Currently, we're bringing on a 2.0 for our database. And we might be able to get there, but at this point in time, we don't have the mechanism to get there. With reporting where people work, and then again, folks change jobs all the time. And so the encumbrance would be on the individual to provide us that information, and there could be downstream reasons why I not want to go there, for such as not keeping us informed. It's usually an issue, unpleasant monetary issue. If we put it in rule that you have to tell us where you're working and then you don't, and we find out about it and you get a civil penalty, that kind of headache. So,
Can I, that's the one to ask a question, or maybe more of a statement. So what I hear, and I think maybe probably what you're getting at is that, you know, the SOTB website or the HLO website where you can, you know, do the search is kind of the only place. I don't know of any other like OSO, NORADS, and maybe there's some kind of search where the public could search for qualified providers. So I understand this is not, you know, it's like this is more tied into ORS and OARs, and we can't make I get everything you're saying, but I think I'm wondering if like there's a conversation to be had, and perhaps it isn't in this context, but outside at our other boards of like, what are the ways that we can highlight and better have a search feature? Because yeah, it's like where people practice, it's hard to know. It's like even for me who knows the relatively small amount of providers, like we kind of know everybody, you know, if you work in this field, you kind of know everybody, but I still don't know when someone contacts us in a certain area that we don't work. It's hard to know who works where, who works with what. While like what you're saying is like people stop doing this work, but they keep their licenses active. And so we've had quite a few people that have just the public that are looking for therapists that use the search feature, which is helpful, but it's like, it's hard to know, wanting to point people all under this idea that we would, the community would be protected by having the right type of therapist, which is, you know, why
well, if I may, this is Bob, someone searching for a therapist, I'm just trying to think linearly, would likely be referred by somebody, a counselor, a friend, a doctor, or whatever, or go online. And then it would be up to the individual searching for therapist to, you know, if they understand there's a license required, to come to our website and see if there's any kind of action taken by HLO against the individual, if their license is up to snuff, or, you know, is part of stuff. but it's, valid and current.
Yeah.
And if there's been any action taken against the provider. And then, so someone would actually have to probably have a good idea of how the whole system works. And then maybe go to Osotin or OATS's website to see if there's been any action on that end against individual. I don't even know what information Osotin or OATS would have on their website or someone looking for a provider.
Right.
So,
Right. And it's a personal responsibility, like someone who's seeking a therapist is their responsibility. But, I guess my thing is like, is there a way that gate is pretty heavy and narrow to get into to find, the average person who, they're coming to us oftentimes, they're in crisis, stuff's just happened in the family, their son or daughter got removed and they're just like, help, I don't know how do you Google for what we do if there's not so it's not on the HLO or the SOTB necessarily, but it's just that bigger question of like, how do we make this more accessible with the right providers so that we can help the public?
I was just looking to see if anybody up online, up on the screen. Yeah, I totally agree with you that, somebody just has to know, or somebody has to provide the information.
Right.
But what we do is we, regulate the profession itself. And so maybe a better suited question for that, so also.
This is John, just a comment on that, is just a thought of, why don't we suggest in our respective boards that we create a link to the SOTB from our website so that we, if someone's searching for a sex offense therapist, hey, here's where you can look and check and see if there's one in your neighborhood.
This is Devin, and that you need to check, like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Well, I mean, we could go get a tattoo. You look at the tattoo, so, licenses to see if the person that you're going to get a tattoo from has any questions on their license.
Right. So any active investigation or active notices on an individual will be on the website, but once that's all satisfied, then it goes away. But if we'll do a public records request if somebody says, hey, has there been any action taken against, Joe therapist? So, and we'll provide what is public record and which is basically a complaint, potentially, and the notice and order, all the administrative actions that we may take.
Right. Yeah, the more people that come to the HLO website and do the search, we have the problem of people don't even do that.
Correct.
They just, if you ask somebody, that's why we have these executive sessions where we talk about, people that are out of their scope that don't have certifications. Why we're having this is because a lot of people still, a lot of clinicians are saying, I can do that work, and so, and the public doesn't know about the HLO site to search, even to search to know, they just take, because again, they're in crisis often, so they're often like, this person says they do that, here we are, we're in crisis, and then they get down the road and someone's provided services unethical, and so anyway.
Yeah, I mean, same thing, not to drag this on,
Yeah.
this is Bob, if somebody goes to an office and they have interns, and the first person they can have contact was the intern, and the intern goes beyond what they're allowed to do or should be doing because, their supervisor's not in office. So.
This is John. Bob, you said something before. If I'm looking somebody up on the HLO SOT website and they've had an issue, a complaint on their license, did you say that goes away after a time?
So what we show on our website is unresolved disciplinary action.
I'm sorry.
Unresolved.
Okay.
And so once it's resolved, it's no longer on the front facing website. But we still have the record and it's parts of it would be a matter of a public record.
So since it's John again, if there was a complaint on me from 2019, at some point it will go away if someone looks me up.
On the public facing website.
Interesting. Okay, I would feel more comfortable if that just, was on, because I know, again, on the LCSW side, if someone's had a complaint resolved and it's been resolved, it sticks with their license for as long as I can think of, because I've looked some people up that. Anyway, just a thought. I was thinking, is that statutory that it fades? Is there an expiration on complaints?
Well, no.
Okay.
So if an action happens in 2010 and we get a complaint in 2024, we'll question why are we getting it now, but we'll look into it.
Right.
But however long a therapist or someone in the profession is required to keep those records, you know, might stop us dead in our tracks, but we'll at least make the effort to ascertain what happened. And if it was factual or not, we may even interview the practitioner.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
So yeah, none of our complaints, some of them drag on for years. Once we receive the complaint, just because on the mass, and Travis can speak to that, but just on the mass number of complaints we get and the limited number of investigators we have with all of our programs and boards, 80,000 plus licensees. So we regulate a little city, but it's different. Yeah. So, okay. Any other questions?
So Bob, one more question. This is Devin Vaughn. I'm just, I guess, making an assumption here that the low numbers of the associate, certified associate, clinical associate, and the secondary. And I know that we talked last time about the secondary. I think that was the newest kind of rung of certification that was kind of put into place with that idea that there's rural providers that might never get enough numbers to be a certified clinical to the highest level. I guess I'm assuming that's why there's the numbers on the secondary are lower than the certified clinical.
I'll just be upfront. I don't know why they're lower. I don't know why, if someone required to move to progress up in the profession.
Do you want me to handle that one, Bob?
Thank you. Save me.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Ann Thompson. The idea behind that certification from the legislative intent was to try to attract providers in far-flung areas of the state who had criteria for the clinical level, but who would never see enough patients to amass the hours for full clinical status. So they created this carve out by which somebody has very high level credentials, but they can see a maximum of 9 clients at a time. So that was the purpose for that. Why there aren't more people, I have no explanation for. I can only tell you what the intent of that certification was.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks for
Of
bringing me
course.
out, Ann. Appreciate it.
Oh, I'm always here for you, Bob.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, anybody online? Karen? Shannon? All good?
No, thank you.
No
Good.
questions. Thank you.
All right, so the next slide, if y'all following along, is slide 30, is the financial report. We're basically right where we need you financially. Currently in 2025, we've got a beginning cash balance of $12,373. We've had $9,900 come in for revenue. Expenditures, $3,456. Net operations, $6,444, with an ending cash balance of $18,817. So we're right where we need you, and we hope we continue to move up into the positive territory and not slip down where we were in 21 at a deficit of about $11,000.
Bob, can I ask a question? It's Devin Vaughn. So I know that we talked a little bit about this in our last meeting, and so maybe Ann, you can help with my question, but I know that there's reasons why we're coming out of the deficit. I know that there's been questions in the past about the cost of recertification, and it happens on a yearly basis versus some of the other licenses that are every 2 years. Has there been any thought of changing that, lessening the license fee? I hear that a lot, and also the every year aspect of it. Has there been any conversation about changes to how, not having to re-up every year, or changing the structure of the fee?
That is statutory. And
Yes, the 1-year license is statutory. There's nothing we can do about that. And as far as the fees go, and this comes up periodically, Bob is correct in that you're where you want to be financially, in that your expenditures and your revenues are about equal. but you do not have much of a fiscal cushion. Okay, this board has only recently come out of the red. It ran in the red for a decade because it had a bad case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and you essentially ran on the charity of other boards. That's what kept you going. You don't have much of a cushion. So there would be no talk of any fee discounts or anything like that until this board establishes enough of a financial cushion. Some of our bigger boards, have $1 million, some have a couple $100,000. Whatever the fiscal analysts think is a safe amount to have in case you have a bad case. Once that threshold is reached and we watch it constantly, we might talk about some kind of discount for renewing online or some other opportunity to lower fees. But unless something has drastically changed, I don't think you're anywhere close to that mark right now.
Okay, thank you.
And it doesn't take much for DOJ to eat up any savings that the board, any program can have, so we've seen.
Yeah, this board.
So we've seen, yes.
Well, this board, Bob, also has had, I think the last fall, 4 pieces of legal advice. This board has in the past been, has asked for a lot of legal advice on what it can and can't do. And even though the DOJ gives us a nice flat rate, that is still very expensive advice to get. And when you have 3, 4 pieces of it going at any time, that eats away at that cushion. So everything we do with them does cost money. So just bear that in mind. If you ask, well, can we do this? Can we do that? That does cost money. And that will come out of your bottom line.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we will move on to the regulatory report. Trampus.
Hello, everybody again. This is Trampus Shuck, Interim Regulatory Manager, here to talk about the regulatory report. So we've kind of gone back and forth. We've had a few issues that have come up about regulatory already. But this is some of the details about the cases that we have and just maybe a few updates in general. So as you can see on here, we have 3 bienniums still left on this report. There's one case that's still holding on from that oldest biennium. We had 17 cases come in that time frame. These, maybe I'll back up just a bit. I just want to clarify because we have some new board members, so it might be best to back up a bit and give you a little bit of what this report actually is telling us. So you got these 3 bienniums, 2021, 2023, 2025. Those are 2-year time periods that go between July 1st through June 30th for that 2-year period. So for example, this 2025 biennium, we are right in the middle of. We're a little further than middle, but we were right in the middle of it a couple of months ago. So you can see we've only had 3 complaints come in for that biennium, and we're most of the way through it, or a good portion of the way through it. So unless something changes, we could have a pretty low volume of complaints coming in for that biennium. The 2023 biennium, you can see for that 2-year period, the whole 2-year period, we only had 7. And then that 2021 biennium, you can notice that we had 17 come in. So that's kind of an unusually high number. It doesn't look like it's trending that way. Sometimes you'll see these years where you'll just get a whole bunch of complaints in, or bienniums where you just get a whole bunch of complaints in, and it's just a point in time, and and sometimes it's a larger trend. But it looks like it's not necessarily a larger trend in this case, but we'll see how the rest of the years go. And then you can see the open, and then you can see the closed cases. And then right along the bottom, you see the grand total for the number of cases, grand total. That include the open cases and the closed cases. The open cases, it seems pretty self-explanatory. Open means open. Well, at some point you have to decide when you close a case, and these cases have a lot of steps to them. You get the complaints in, they get looked at, by myself and the admin staff, and then they get assigned to an investigator if they have that meet a certain threshold. And then they go through the investigation, and then they are done with the investigation. They come to me, back to me to look at if there's any kind of alleged violations or any kind of ambiguity as to whether or not there is alleged violations. Then they come to the board, and the board looks at them. And then if the board decides to take action, then we draft up that action, we send it out. And then there's a whole nother situation on the back end where they have rights to contest those findings and that kind of thing. So somewhere along that line, you have to call it closed. And we call it closed either when we've closed it without action, like it comes to me and there's just no violations. We've had to take it to the board and the board says, oh, there's no violations. Or the board says, hey, there are violations. We want to do this proposed sanction. Once we mail out that sanction, that's when we call it closed. So these can be an open, can mean anywhere from it just came in all the way up to we're waiting to send a sanction out. Closed is usually that just means we're not doing anything, it's done. But it could mean also that we sent out a sanction, but we're in that back end hearing process where we're not counting it as open in the system, but it's still got some stuff going on. So that's kind of what open and closed mean. I know that kind of a long explanation, but it is kind of a nuanced categories. There's only two, and there's lots of stages things can be in. Complaints by type. These are telling us generally what type of complaints are coming in, licensing concerns versus services provided. Licensing concerns are somebody's not licensed, somebody's inactive and still practicing. Those kinds of things usually are licensing concerns. Could be a CE audit or something like that. That could be a licensing concern, or those types of things. Services provided are basically more like a practice standard violation. Somebody has alleged a practice standard violation, such as somebody not following the ethical codes or something like that. And that, as you can see, how those numbers break down. Over the 27 complaints that we've got, it's almost 50-50. It's 12 licensed current versus 15 services provided. So, and then you see complainants by type. Complainants by type is, we don't get a lot of anonymous complaints for this group. You see we got 0 of the 27 were anonymous. 3 were directly from clients. So clients actually were the ones who drove the complaint. And then 24 are other, which is a big category. And that can include a family member, that can include another provider, that can, it could include anybody, could some mandatory reporter, something like that. So it can be a lot of big category, and that seems to be the biggest category where most of your complaints come from, is from either a family member or somebody else kind of saying, hey, I'm not sure that this is right. So that's kind of what you're seeing on the regulatory report. Did anybody have any questions about the regulatory process or the regulatory report or anything that we just talked about?
Travis, this is Devin Vaughn. Just a question about, again, when someone is being investigated and then there's some kind of resolution, is that always brought back to the board, or is that sometimes just taken care of on an HLO level?
Well, so if it's just a really clear-cut case that there's no violation found, then it may not come. It probably won't come back to the board. If there's any ambiguity whatsoever, like we're just, we have some inkling that, well, I don't know, we better bring, get the experts to look at this. Then we'll bring it to the board. And definitely, if there's any violation that we're thinking happened, we always bring those to the board. So it's a pretty low threshold to come back to the board. Yeah, so that's kind of how it works. The other piece of that is that we have been without an SME for quite some time, a subject matter expert, and we're right in the middle of the process of bringing a subject matter expert on to help us out with cases and some stuff also for licensing. So we're bringing on a dual role for them. And I think that's going to help out in helping to, first off, kind of triage these cases when they come in. We can have that SME look at them and kind of just give us the idea of whether or not, you know, what's being alleged here is actually a violation, and then also help us shore up those violations and help us guide our investigation and be a little more thorough in making sure that we've tracked down all of the information that we need to support any potential violations. So we are bringing that on. We used to have a couple, but then we have been without for a while, and we're getting that program back rolling again. So.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Travis? Karen, Shannon, you're awful quiet up there.
No, thanks. Thank you for that information, though.
All right.
Thank you.
And to kind of tie in to what Travis was just talking about and what John had brought up earlier, this is Bob, by the way, about what is shown on the website. So what shows on the website, like I said, is unresolved disciplinary action. But also on the website, if someone goes to this board on the right-hand side, disciplinary actions. So you click on that, it'll show all notices and final orders that go back years. Okay, so I didn't want to leave you hanging. I forgot about that.
Thank you. Because
Yeah, so it is there. Okay, any questions? Moving on, Chair, you have the script for initial parties feedback.
Yes. At this time, the Sexual Offense Treatment Board will hear public and interested parties' feedback. Members of the public, please wait until you have been recognized. Once recognized, please state your name and affiliation to the board for the record.
Dan?
There's nobody here. I had one guy reach out and say he was gonna have public comment, but I don't see him on here, so.
Okay. That's short and sweet. Any other board business that the board would like HLO to work on or?
Yeah, this is Devin. Hoping to maybe have a conversation about, probably the main point of conversation that we had last time about, this idea of, we got some DOJ input on ORSs around, ages that fall under the purview of the SOTB. And the reason at that time that I think I brought that up was because there's a lot of conversation happening in our world, meaning in the work we do, of these younger youth who are generally 12 and under, who are, I mean, it's a really good thing that there's more of a spotlight on these youth, where they used to kind of be underground, and then you often would get someone at 14 or 15 who pops up, is charged with a sex crime, and then you get their information and you see through like auxiliary reports or DHS CPS reports that there was CPS calls, when these youth were 8, 9, 10, 11. And the thought was always, how great would it be if we could be able to provide intervention when they were that age. It's starting to happen. So we're starting to a lot of us who do this work, especially with the generally adolescent group, are getting referrals for these younger youth, sometimes, at 5 years old and up. And so there's been the question, similar to the questions on who can do this work under SOTB, but really related to that age, a 5-year-old child who is, having reactive sexual behaviors that, we found out last time meet the criteria in the ORS around, or I think it's an OAR, that kind of, my understanding from that meeting was that it covers all actions that are under the definition, which generally, I'm going to paraphrase, but any sexual contact that's against consent and is done in a way that's not mutual, that's coercive or manipulative. There's a definition that falls, and that's basically, from my understanding, what is kind of the broad, oversight, which means that if you have a 6-year-old who did a manipulative, kind of sexual contact with another youth, that would need to be, my understanding is that would need to then be an SOTB certified therapist that would see that child. So since that time, our last meeting, there's been House Bill 4086 that basically enacted 2 boards, one specifically around problematic sexual behaviors. And if you remember, I think one of the things that we came to at the end was that, just knowing that the SOTB, we can't necessarily, as this board, it's not our job to change ORS statute, but perhaps that, the House bill is a place or another place legislatively that can kind of provide maybe some kind of, alternate or changed language so that we can make sure that people who are seeing these youth are qualified and have best practices and training and all that. But there are a lot of these types of youth who are younger that are seeing child therapists. They're seeing child advocacy centers who are providing those services. So under my understanding of the purview of the SOTB, if a child therapist who is using play therapy and a variety of things to help work with that child, they might be very, very equipped to do so. But currently the language of the SOTB would make it so that they're not able to do that, and that really they should be, they need to be certified by SOTB. And there's a big rift right now within that world of child therapists, CACs, child advocacy centers, other places that are saying, oh no, we should be able to see these youth. But by the definition of SOTB, that conflicts with it to the point where that's a board complaint potentially. So I'm just summarizing where things are at, because this conversation, I think, is a fluid one that's happening within our worlds. So I guess I'm bringing it to the board. Robbie, you're on that House Bill board. That's kind of meeting, subcommittee that's meeting, is it meeting weekly or month?
Twice monthly, so 6 hours a month. Again, just focused on, so there's 2 committees, one's focused on DHS, jurisdiction issues and probably redefining who DHS can, whether or not they can find youth within their jurisdiction, so found reports. And then the second that I'm on is specifically for PSB kids and looking at how do we as a state serve them. And so, I'm sorry, this is Robbie. Part of my concern, and when I asked the question about, is there any way to differentiate providers and who they serve, has to do with the fact that my understanding is there's probably around 30 in the state that SOTB providers that serve youth. And again, those folks are serving the 12 and over population. And so finding anyone who's willing to see those younger kids that's certified, or is there an opportunity? I think part of what this group is going to look at is there an opportunity for them to be served by CACs or other child therapists. So it's a big topic this year, and I think the last time we also talked about maybe the potential for subgroups of this board, and I think if that is a possibility, this is a really big topic in the state, then maybe we could consider.
This is Bob. Are you aware of a legislative concept that is becoming this way, or?
So it was LCA 165, and then it's become a House bill. So it's House Bill 4086.
Or 2025, or is this?
It's current.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or 24?
24.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So
What's the House bill again? 2026?
No, 4086.
Okay.
So it was also appointments. And so I said on behalf of OJDDA on the, and it was a process to get appointed. And so I sat on for the PSB committee. And there's 12 of us. There's so is a representative from juvenile departments, sheriffs, police, a judge, DOJ. There's
Provider.
15 of us providers, CACs.
Yeah, that's Bob, that's a study committee.
Gotcha. So what's your ask?
Yeah.
I'm sure the reason Ann, sorry to cut you off the spot. The reason Ann probably asked for the bill number is so she can go in and look at it and.
I did.
stuff.
Yeah. So this is Devin. Yeah, I mean, so what's the question? I think part of it is that the year-long study, right, is gonna come with recommendations on should there be any movement legislatively to better support or cover these under 18. And they're looking at under 18, not just under 12, right? So it's because it's tied to the other subcommittee, which is around CPS, essentially not naming under 18s as a identified person on their reports, so that those kids aren't named and that sticks with them. So they're trying to, so it's a two-parter of sorts. So I think they want to take some legislative action and make some changes, but what came up was that when they were doing that initial dive into the CPS thing that they wanted to do, they realized everybody, all the providers and all the people that are stakeholders are saying, hey, we have this huge problem with these, especially these under 12 kids, and in general, up to 18 of like services and who provides it. And I think a lot of us are sitting there hearing, we were in these town hall meetings that DHS kind of put on before the House bill was introduced. And we're all like, well, it's almost like there was no acknowledgement of the SOTB, and there's already rules over who can provide these services. And there was a lot of different factions saying, well, we work with young kids, we work with a 10-year-old that has sexual behavior problems or has done sexual acting out. And we're sitting there being like, wait a minute, you have to be certified to do that. But it was pretty overwhelming that there's just, because it's pretty easy in the adolescent world when there's a mandated client and they're on probation for a sex offense. It's like they need a sex offense specific treatment provider. But when it's a 10-year-old and there's no chance of them being charged with a crime, they're too young, no DA is going to file charges on that, then it goes underground. And that's where it can be, where someone's looking up, who do I go to for this type of therapy? And they just Google stuff, and whoever they find they go to, there's no thought of SOTB board or looking people up. I don't think people are aware of that. So it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue, both because of the language that guides this board about who can cover and work with these clients. Because that's not something that's, so the question back to, I'm sorry, I'm being long-winded here, but the question is there the opportunity, for example, this is one idea, for this board to recommend a subcommittee that would work simultaneously or somehow gather some folks from our field to be able to represent, not the board, but in tandem with the House bill group to make sure that the intent of this board is kind of carried out for the protection of the community, to make sure we have the providers that are the right type of providers. It's a half-baked idea question. I don't know if that's possible. What is possible?
So we operate when the statute comes to us, and we're the enforcement arm, practice standards and licensing, so on and so forth. I would imagine that it would be better placed at SOTB to work that, and then work with the other subgroup to work on legislation. And then once it comes to us, then we are able to put, we'll get a concept or a bill, and then we'll do an analysis on it, and based on what we have current statute, help that at that point align how it would work within HLO and the board. And then, but there could be multiple agencies working on the same bill analysis. So we would see what, DHS is working on and what their input is, and then they can see what our input in it is, and then the legislators or the committees could align it to what, how they see fit. So HLO, typically does not, do legislative concepts. Because we're the enforcement arm, you bring it to us and we'll tell you how it works.
Yeah, Bob, this is Ann. If I could support you on that. As I mentioned, this board is part of the executive branch. We carry out the laws. It is inappropriate for this board to be part of making the laws. However, as a practitioner or a member of OSOTN or a member of OATSA, you are welcome to participate, testify, work on whatever group you like. The important thing is to let them know when you're sending in testimony or sitting in the room and testifying that you are on the SOTB board, but you are there in your capacity as a practitioner or a member of another group. And I see Shannon's got her hand up, Bob.
Thank you. Yes, I was just going to offer separate from my seat as an SOT board member, but in my role as ED at SATF, we do work on policy, including LCs and things. So if you want to have a conversation, we'd maybe be happy to see how we could help or give any guidance separate from this board meeting.
Shannon, that's directed to whom? To HLO or to who?
To Devin and the rest of the members who are interested in maybe working on this in their capacity as practitioners.
And so before Ann jumps on that, I'll say, you gotta be careful. Because it may not be a board meeting that a group of you get together and have this discussion, but the perception could be, wait a minute, they're having an unsanctioned, unnoticed board meeting.
Thank
Right.
you, Bob.
It would just be in our capacity at SATF. We have advisory committees that work on this stuff, so I'd be happy to invite folks to join. There's other folks there from the community, and they are very separate from this.
No, it's separate in intent, but what Bob is getting to is that quorum for a board meeting is triggered by the bodies in the room, not the intent. So you can have, I've broken up inadvertent board meetings in the bathroom. If there is a quorum of the board present, be very, very careful. If you're talking about anything that affects the board or board business, the safest thing to do is for somebody to get up and leave.
Mhm.
Because if you have a majority of the SOTB board present for anything, it could be construed as an inadvertent board meeting. That's why reply all with email is the devil. Right?
Understood. Yep.
Okay, just wanted to make sure because the Oregon Government Ethics Commission got additional teeth in legislation and they are getting complaints about board members taking actions and doing things, and they are acting on them. So it's just a warning, even if your intent is there to talk about something else, make sure you don't have a quorum in the room. Just backing Bob on that one.
Yep.
John?
Yeah, Bob, this is John Thomas, and also just for full disclosure, 3 of us at this table are very aware that we all sit on the OSOT board. Mine is, I got that seat by virtue of my job with the Youth Authority. And so far, the meeting, there hasn't been a meeting yet that all 3 of us have been present. But we're very mindful of that's going to happen someday.
Thank you.
The other issue that I wanted to speak of is it a matter of PR and public education? Because as far as the SOTB and certification of treatment providers like CAC, people out in the community, because I have anecdotal personal experience of being out in Eastern Oregon when I was trying to make a go of private practice, trying to get some traction with providing sex offense treatment work to folks in rural Eastern Oregon, and being told that my service by the EOC, the CCO, that my services were already met by their member organizations, and not one of them is on the is a licensed sex offense treatment provider. And I sent them the OAR saying, this is the statute. And they said, thank you, but we're done here. So that's the problem, is you have CCOs, you have organizations out there that willingly ignore the need for certification.
That's where the complaint process would.
Exactly. And so it's very, and it's very difficult to, in my experience, because I mean, I'm keep my ear to the ground, and if I hear of somebody doing that, but it's not like they're advertising it. It's not like it's public knowledge that they're providing. But when I worked for child welfare, that was that, you know, you would have a therapist at the local CMHP providing therapy and of course wasn't part of this back then, but it's in rural Oregon, in rural anywhere, you have to be all things to all people. And sometimes the dual relationship rules, who knows, other ethnic rules kind of become very gray. And so
Well,
it's-
Bob, this is Ann. You guys still have exemptions from licensure in your statutes, right? Like, you know that? I mean, it's a person, 675, 382. A person employed by a local, state, or federal government agency, community mental health program, or drug and alcohol treatment program licensed or certified in the state. If the person's activities and services are performed and provided within the person's scope of employment. So that's an exemption that still exists in your statute. If some of the scenarios you're talking about might fit into that, there may not be a complaint. That might be something that if a group is looking at a legislative concept, they want to tighten that up, just something to look at.
What was that OAR again, Ann? This is John. Were you quoting an OAR?
No, not a rule. This is your statute.
Oh,
This
in the
is your
statute. Okay,
statute.
thank you.
And the statute is 675.382. Exceptions from requirements of 675, 365 to 675, 410. That's essentially saying within the statutes, the exemptions from people required to have a certification to provide this work. There's 3. One is a student enrolled in an approved educational program who is pursuing a graduate degree in a mental health field. If the student provides sexual abuse specific treatment only for academic credit, there's that one. The one I just cited is number 2. And the third is a person who is a recognized member of the clergy if the person is acting in the person's capacity as a member of the clergy. So those are still valid exemptions to required certification.
And this is Devin. What would be the process, or how would that be tightened up, as you said?
If I may, Bob, this is Ann. What an individual or an association in their capacity as an individual, any individual as a practitioner or anybody else, or an association can get a concept, approach a legislator, explain that there's an issue, and get a legislative concept going. The important thing is that you'd want to work with anybody who might argue with that, whether it be youth authority or any of these anybody who's offering these services who might have an issue with that, work with them in advance, because the legislature does not like to mediate squabbles in the hearing rooms. And you would want to get a legislator to carry that concept for you. They can only carry so many at a time. So get ahead of it. I mean, a regular person thinks that 2026 is a long way away, but it's not in terms of legislation. And get a concept that closes that or has additional provisos in it. And then it has to ride the legislative roller coaster and see where it ends up. And if it's something that affects the health licensing office, I would urge you to have Director Bothwell look it over to make sure that it works the way you intend it to work. But we're neutral on all legislation, but sometimes important little mechanisms get left out. Making sure that it fits neatly with how we do things is always a good idea.
Thanks, Ann.
What she meant was send it to me and I'll give it to her. Okay, good discussion.
So just to summarize this, Devin, just the and I understand that the role of the SOTB, what it is and what it isn't. And so for us here, I think that the idea is to look outside at our organizations that can help. I think, because my thing is just that I want SOTB to be apprised of what's happening, because it's a big discussion that's happening and it's really fluid, like, and it's gonna have a big impact. And so it behooves us, I think, to be involved in that and to, and again, for the sake of the safety of the community, that's kind of our role, that just wanting the right people to provide the service. At the same time, we have a dearth of providers, like, we need people, and we need that younger age to be able to be met with well. Because that's like the key to, to the preventative piece. So we don't have 15-year-olds or 25-year-olds later that could have been intervened upon when they were younger. So anyway, that, I think maybe it's on us to go to our boards and try to be involved. Maybe even more involved. We have people that are on the board, but we're on those House bills, but.
It's Robbie. It has been surprising, I will say, the amount of education that I've been providing folks who I would have assumed knew that you had to be licensed to serve this population, including people who are licensed that didn't know you had to be licensed to serve a younger, an under 12 population, the same behaviors. So I think.
Well, growth is slow, Spawn, because years and years ago, you just couldn't hang the shingle.
Right.
You could do the work, but you just couldn't hang the shingle. So, and I thought I understood, Devin said that this youth problem is starting to come more to light through DHS.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a positive thought, and change is slow sometimes. Not that that's a good thing in this occasion, but
Right.
I'm sure it's not the.
Yeah, it wasn't so long ago, Bob, that this was a voluntary certification. In terms of legislation, it's fairly new that there was some restriction put on practice, and they phased out the legacy folks that didn't really have a mental health license. Change is slow.
Yeah. Hopefully that change can, increase the speed, can increase, since Robbie's on a research panel and you're all in your associations, and information, whatever she can share and make things work. But I would imagine that DHS and OYA have limitations themselves because you're dealing with minors.
Right.
So. Very interesting. Right. Awkward silence. Shannon or Karen, anything from you?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Nothing else, Chair, you can adjourn us.
Okay. The Sexual Offense Treatment Board meeting is adjourned at 10:19 a.m.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.